You know, I'm right. Nick Durst here with Joe Calabrese and Joe. We've had many guests on, but this is the first time we have had a professor on. Some may know him as Kyle Edwards, but there's a lot more to him than that.
Absolutely. He's got extensive experience being an on-air television personality and broadcaster in multiple different places. He's most notably known for being Kyle Edwards from WWE. He's worked for MSG before. He's worked for Sportsnet. We'll get into his other experience when we introduce him. He is now officially the second or 2.5. I mean, we've had a couple Canadians on, but I think it's 2.5 Canadian person that we've had on the show. So we're going to get into that a little bit too as well. Really, really excited to have him on, Mr. Arda Ocal. Arda, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Nick, Joe, appreciate it. Really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Joe, you need to tell me about your background. What's in your, I can only see, but I love what I'm seeing. I can't see it in detail though. So you got to tell me what's back there.
Okay. So the showcase on the top of the bookshelf where my thumb is going is a showcase full of old baseball cards.
Okay.
So we've got some cards in there from mostly from the late 70s, the 80s, late 90s, and the 2000s. So it includes obviously major players. You got a couple of Yankees in there. You got a couple of Griffey cards in there. And then on the bottom is my bookshelf. So that's where I have all my books. I have some pop figurines, some mementos from through the years. Obviously,
beauty.
Nerd at heart, like Nick.
Of course.
So I have my Harry Potter books over there, my Game of Thrones books over there. I have all my Batman graphic novels over there. I am a huge nerd at heart. And at the bottom, you can't really see it, but on the bottom bookshelf is all my old WWE books. And now that nobody reads anymore, those probably collected a little more dust the last couple of years. But there's a WWE encyclopedia down there. There's a history of WrestleMania book, a couple of biographies. I have Jericho's biographies, Mankind's, The Rock's, a couple of Jim Ross books are down there. So very, very extensive. You are the first person to come on and ask me about the bookshelf. It's kind of like tucked away in the background.
I might also be. I might also be one of the guests that's actually present in your bookshelf. If it's the latest encyclopedia version, then I'm actually in there, which is pretty awesome because now that can further, like when the pandemic is over, I can now do the Comic-Con and convention circuit for those hardcore collectors that need every autograph in the WWE encyclopedia. They're going to have to come and find me to complete their mission. So I'm very proud of this. I should probably stay elusive until like it really becomes valuable to like 20 people that are actually doing this, and then just charge like $1,000 or some ludicrous amount. Like, you know what, you want to finish your collection? It's going to cost you 10 grand.
Absolutely. It's called supply and demand.
Yes,
you know, exactly. There it is. That's Arda's using his mathematics and physics administration background, University of Waterloo.
That's right. Let's go.
Arda, when you go to school for mathematics and business administration, did you plan to go into broadcasting, or did you kind of just change your mind midway through it?
Honestly, I didn't even think that broadcasting would be a viable job. Like, I grew up in a family that immigrated. They came from Turkey. They were it's very different thinking, right? Like, they just wanted a good life. Like, that's how they thought. So like growing up, I didn't even think that broadcasting would ever be an option for me. It would be like, hey, go be a doctor, or go be a lawyer, like that kind of thing. You hear like the stereotypical thing you would hear from immigrant parents, right? So we settled on business. They were like, if you get this math, then that's the reason I could do the math business degree, was because the math part was like appeasing the parents, but the business part was the thing that I actually like took an interest in. But while I was at university, I honestly spend most of my time, like instead of partying on weekends, I would spend it at like the local radio station. And like they just let me volunteer there. And I found that to be so much fun. Like, I didn't even know that I wanted to, like, I always thought it was an awesome job. And I always like looked up to people who were talking on television for a living, but I didn't realize that it would ever be something I could pursue. So like, I now looking back on it, I caught the bug in college because I wrote at the school newspaper and I like stayed so many hours at like the radio station. But then even after that, I took a regular job. Like, I was a project manager for a few years And it wasn't until I was like 27 on that I really sort of decided, you know what, I'm going to give this an honest full-time try. And even during that time, nights and weekends, I'd spend it either making side money, DJing, or I'd go to the Rogers TV, the local radio or the public access channel, and just learn from like the different departments because I thought it was fun. And so that's really how it started. But mid-20s was when I was like, I see people that are making a living off of this that I know, and I know how they got there. So why can't I do that? You know? So like, that's how it started.
You see, Joe, there's still hope for us. Now, Arda, I love the fact that you were in Second City in Toronto.
Oh yeah, loved it.
I want to hear about that, but first we're going to give you a scenario here. You're going to improv it, all right? We're going to do some role playing here.
Okay.
And Joe is going to be DJ Pauly D from Jersey Shore. He's calling you up, and he wants you to join him on his world tour.
Okay.
Take
And who am I?
Guys.
What's up? What's up?
Is this the DJ Pauly D?
You betcha. How you doing?
I'm great. How did you get my number?
Oh, I got my connects.
Okay, I got you.
We're gonna fly you in. Are you dual citizen?
I am a dual citizen. Yeah, good.
Everything's okay with your passport.
You're doing your due diligence, DJ Pauly D. I'm surprised that you're calling me and not your agent. Like, I love how you are. Like, I feel so loved, DJ Pauly D. This is impressive.
Listen, I take care of my friends. Okay.
Okay.
We're gonna come. You're gonna bring you in. We're gonna have a great time.
And
I wish my hair was spiked though. I wish Nick would have prepared me.
Yeah, DJ Pauly D. I got to tell you, that beard is a big departure from you. You're normally so clean shaven.
I know. I'm looking a little more like Vinny with the well, his beard's I think a little more patchy.
I was gonna say, DJ Pauly D's got a situation going on. That's what's up.
And scene. Fantastic.
Wow.
Me and Situation actually share a birthday. Both our birthdays are July 4th.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
I actually interviewed the Situation once when I was at the Score. He showed up at this random party. I was like doing a red carpet for some sports event, and he showed up and like, I forget what it was. Oh, this was around when Zach Ryder was doing his YouTube video or a YouTube series. Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, and they were both using "Are You Serious, Bro?" Do you remember like how Zach Ryder like started using it on Twitter, and then the Situation also started to use it, and so like that weekend, the Situation showed up on the red carpet. So I got like 45 seconds with him, and I asked him about, hey, like, do you know Zach Ryder? Like that he's also using the "Are You Serious, Bro?" And he's like, no, I have no idea who that is. And so I clipped that and I sent it to Zach Ryder, and I was like, you should probably see this. And he put it in his YouTube series. So that was like I felt so accomplished. I was like, oh man, I made it onto Z True Long Island Story. Look at me. This is amazing.
What a show. Should have won the Slammy Award.
Absolutely.
Absolutely revolutionized, in all seriousness, the way WWE did YouTube. We had Scott Stanford on. He totally agreed. He was a big role in that show.
Oh, if you told me that, then I wouldn't have done this show. You guys had Scott Stanford before me? Oh, please. Come on. Here's an improv scene. Here's Arda Ocal about to do an interview with Joe and Nick after hearing Scott Stanford has been a guest previously. 3, 2, 1.
And we've lost Arda. All right, everybody, that's going to do it here for this episode. I'm right.
You know, Scott, speaking of Scott, I actually pitched WWE.com to do an article on him because he's been there for over 10 years now, which is actually unheard of. Like, truthfully, Scott has had a really interesting WWE career. He is, I would call him the longest tenured WWE on-air talent that you've never heard of.
Yeah.
And it's not his own fault. It's not his own fault. It's just he just never, other than like maybe a superstar stint here and there, like all he does is like This Week in WWE and like the Canadian updates and Bottom Line or whatever, like all the international stuff that doesn't get on Raw and SmackDown.
He's definitely big internationally. I know Joe and I know if you cross paths with him with Tony Luffman. So when he was with the company, he told me like he went over international tour, and he had to get his own police export the whole time because he was like this crazy star over there. I wonder if did you ever experience anything like that, because you were obviously doing a lot of weekly international stuff.
So I never went overseas while I was at WWE. I would say like the funny thing with me is that I was already, and I'm not, being pompous when I say this, but like through Aftermath and or before that, right after wrestling, the WWE audience was already familiar with me because I was on that show every week, right? So by the time I got to WWE, the funniest thing that happened was I showed up so I left in 2013, did other stuff. And then when I got signed by WWE, it was like, I don't know, a year and a half after you had last seen me on Aftermath in Canada. So all of a sudden you're seeing this really familiar face, but a totally different name, right? Like the Arda Ocal that you may have known watching Aftermath in Canada as a wrestling fan suddenly becomes Kyle Edwards, and you're seeing him doing WWE updates in Canada. And that was the first thing, my first assignment was that, of all things. It's like such a funny way to introduce yourself to an audience that already knows you, but completely as a different name, right? So like, I imagine that's how like it is independent wrestlers feel when they're like, very, very well-known independent wrestlers, and then they get a different name in WWE,
Yeah.
So like that was like my introduction. So like, it was kind of funny that like I got all these tweets that day, like, oh yeah, sure, Kyle. Welcome to WWE, Kyle. Like we sure, you look familiar. Like it was kind of funny.
Yeah, we'll definitely want to get into your naming process there. But I wanted to know first, how did you end up at the Score? Obviously, well known because you pitched, created, and produced the Aftermath. Of course, Renee, who ended on coming up, Renee Young, was on that show as well. Just want to know what that process was like for you in that whole time period there for 4 years.
I'm also like the least successful on-air talent of everyone on Aftermath, despite having created it. It's almost like the joke's on me. Like how can I create the show and not reach the levels of success that all of my counterparts have? It's kind of funny. I'm kidding, of course, but like they've gone on to like an immense success, which is amazing. That's like the greatest thing to see because I worked with them for so many years and I saw it firsthand grow into what it has become, right? So how did I get to the Score? May of 2009, I was volunteering on the Sirius XM radio side. They had hardcore sports radio at the time. And I was literally I just applied to volunteer. I was like, I'll cut clips. I have radio experience. And for that summer, I was just a producer or a volunteer hand until the fall when they needed a producer for a fight show, which was like a boxing, MMA, and wrestling show all rolled into one, a daily 1 hour show. And I produced it. And I did that for several years. And then that's when, see, it's like timing and being at the right place at the right time. So what ended up happening was when I got that job, I got put into the company list. Now I'm a part-time employee, right? And I got put into the company list, and all of a sudden, there was a company-wide email that was sent that said, we're looking for pitches for show ideas. If you have one, fill out this one-page form and send it back to my secretary. And this was from the vice president of talent or of programming. And so I had this idea of doing a post-game show for wrestling, sort of like, I guess, what the Talking Dead was, or like a post-game show for sports, right? Like just a very, very easy idea. But I knew that the Score at the time in Canada, not to go too deep in the weeds of Canadian television, but there were 3 national television stations, and the other 2 were battling for top spot. And the Score was the little engine that could, picking up all the rights to the stuff that TSN and Sportsnet didn't want. And one of those things was WWE. And so I thought, well, if you're watching Raw and SmackDown, chances are, if you're a wrestling fan, you're going to stick around for at least a few minutes to hear what people in studio have to say about what you just watched. If nothing else, it's a community builder, but you're probably going to watch the show because there's more wrestling content and you love wrestling. So that's what I took a gamble on, right? So I filled out the form and I sent it to the secretary. And honestly, 15 minutes later, I got an email saying, come to his office and have a talk about this. And that was really the beginning of Right After Wrestling, which became Aftermath.
So we could call you the godfather of Raw Talk and Talking Smack.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. I should take credit. I actually should be getting a check in the mail
Yeah,
I
you should
really
be getting
should.
royalties for that because
You're right.
they're relatively successful now.
That's right.
I think you should call David Otunga and have him represent you in the court of law.
David Otunga is hilarious, man. I love that guy. The funny thing is, David Otunga and Graves and Scott Stanford and Booker T at some point, we would sit on Mondays for the Raw pre-show. We would sit in the conference room all day. They just wanted us there all day, and they told me, "Hey, like shadow Scott because we're gonna have you do this and or something like this eventually." And I did get a few reps on that show, but like the best part of it was they would give us lunch and dinner. So they'd cater lunch and dinner. So we would always order like the most expensive thing on the menu. But I'd always get like the $50 steak. I'm not even kidding. Because I got away with it. Right. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't you? If you had it available to you, of course you're going to take it. It's not like you're going, like they give you the option, you're taking the option. So anyway, we would just sit there and just crack jokes all day. It was a lot. It was hilarious. So,
I heard there might be
a lot of good memories of David Otunga.
An I Love New York reunion. I hope Otunga is going to be on that.
Oh, nice. That'd be great. That would be great.
Absolutely love Otunga. So you're there, you're at the Score. You're also doing stuff as a broadcaster for Rogers Communications, doing various sports. And as you mentioned, you're not necessarily doing the top sports, but you're doing all the other things that the company's getting the rights for. So what was your experience like there? Just and you still do some play-by-play and things now with aren't the major things, but what was it like, doing minor league hockey or junior hockey, then, independent baseball, all these different things that most people probably may have not never heard of, and, doing table tennis. So what was that experience like for you?
First of all, you guys are very well researched. This is all, I can tell you guys really put effort into this, which is awesome. Normally people will just like look at Wikipedia and be like, hey, let's ask this, and this. I give you guys props. This is pretty deep stuff. So what did I loved it. I loved doing, so I had this dream to make it to WWE, right? Like that was really like sort of guiding my thoughts. And I give this advice to anyone who asks if they have a dream to pursue. Make sure that every decision you make is in service to the dream that you have, right? And I knew that WWE wanted broadcasters that had experience outside of wrestling. So at the time, I was also doing independent wrestling shows and things like that. And that's because I wanted to build contacts and rapport with people in the wrestling industry. But I knew that that wasn't going to be enough to catch the eye of WWE. And so I thought, look, I like sports. I love sports, especially hockey, especially combat sports. And I know them really well. I grew up loving them, playing them, watching them. So I can do this. Go to Rogers TV, get some reps with the OHL, with the AHL, and get some combat sports experience there. Do everything they give me because I can make my mistakes there, right? Like that's why I tell people do things at lower level places, because that's where you can learn and make your mistakes and learn and et cetera, right? So that's what I did. And I did that for several years. And I knew that I could build a reel that when I send a reel to WWE, it's not going to be wrestling announcing because they won't care. It's going to be baseball announcing and hockey announcing and combat sports announcing and et cetera. And when they see that, then they're going to say, okay, this guy has way more than wrestling on his resume. Let's give him a look. So that was my thought process. And also I was realistic. I knew that WWE wasn't necessarily a sure thing, right? Like it was probably a long shot, especially for a Canadian. Like there's a whole layer of a Canadian trying to get to America, right? Like that's a whole other layer. That's a big problem and a big challenge, especially today. Back then it was a problem, right? So I said, well, at least I'm going to get this experience so I could always do sports or pursue it, because WWE was one singular job, right? And at the time there wasn't an AEW that was really paying. There was TNA, but they weren't necessarily paying a salary that I could live off of, right? So like, to me, the backup was not necessarily the backup, even in concurrent pursuing sports. So doing hockey and doing all of that. And so, yeah, like I loved it. I wanted to stay as busy as possible. Some days I was working 7 days a week. I didn't care because it didn't feel like work.
Wow. A lot of blood, sweat, and ears in Toronto, Canada.
Yeah.
Working me way up on the independent circuit.
That's not my name, by the way. I did not think of that name. Okay, that is. Do not credit me with that name. That is false. That is fake news. That is incorrect. I did not come up with that name at all. I thought BST was a cool acronym, but like that name is not me at all.
No, of course. So we'll get back to that in a minute. I wanted to ask you quick. So we always like to mention Adnan. He's a really tremendous friend of Nick and I, and very instrumental in helping us look out for guests, people that he's close to. Evidently, he's been very, very spot on with you so far. But Adnan, Canadian, being able to translate to television. You look at somebody like even Ariel Hawani, who I think he does a really, really tremendous job, always did a tremendous job with MMA stuff. So when you were at that stage of your career, naturally speaking, you want to stand out on your own. You want to be your own person. You want to try to find your own voice, your own personality, your own character. What people who were close to you did you want to, well, not say emulate, but what people did you look at and say, okay, I like what this person does. I like what that person does. I want to incorporate some things that this person does, some things that this person does. Who are those people that you looked out for, who you tried to emulate your craft after, and who are people out there at that time who were the most helpful for you in advancing your career?
Well, Adnan's been there forever. He is a mentor to me. He is somebody that I hold in extremely high regard, but he's also an inspiration for people like me, like not only as a Canadian, but also as a Muslim Canadian. It's very difficult for it's very difficult to navigate the waters sometimes, and also even try to make it as a success. And Adnan's story is remarkable. For him to endure what he did in Canada and then make it to ESPN in the way that he did and stay there as long as he did, like that's just a testament to how amazing he is. He's just so good at the job. Absolutely. And he's still, someone who's thriving right now with MLB Network, NHL Network, and he's going to continue to thrive because people like him belong in the industry at very high levels. So, I'm not surprised in the least that he's had the career as long as he has, because not only is he good on camera, but he's just a nice guy. Like that's the key. Like, to me, the key is really, be good at your job, but also be kind to everyone. Like you can't stress how important that is, because the industry is so small, right? If it
radiates off the screen with him.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you can tell how passionate he is, and he talks a mile a minute. Like the way he talks on TV is the way he talks to you on the phone. Like I talked to him last week. I actually called him for advice last week, honestly. And then it was like, yep, this is exactly the Adnan that you would expect. Like if you haven't met Adnan and you want to know what he's like off camera, you know what he's like off camera. You already know. You see him on camera, that's exactly the way he is. So, but yeah, he's been instrumental, definitely. What I like about Ariel is and it's not just MMA anymore. Like he's conquered MMA, really. Like he's going to be somebody who will become one of ESPN's
catalog, I think, of things
that
he's known for in the last year.
He's going to be like, a top NBA reporter. It's really what he wants to do, really. Like he's a star at this point that he can do whatever he wants. And I remember, like, I've been working with him doing segments, et cetera, for, I don't know, 10 to 12 years. And he has just steadily grown. He's just good at his job. He's a very good reporter, and he works very hard. And those are three things that you really want to instill in people if you want them to succeed, or if they want to succeed. Follow that advice and heed that advice. People that I looked up to growing up, I had a holy trinity in WWE, like Mean Gene, Howard Finkel, Gorilla Monsoon were like my three guys that I just was like that. I never wanted to be a pro wrestler. I never wanted to wrestle. I wanted to be the guy holding the microphone, talking to the wrestlers or talking about their matches. That was always the dream. And like, it came from those three. And Mean Gene in particular, like, he really helped. Like, he didn't even have to. He just helped. He cared to help because he saw how much I cared, and he just was like consistently reaching out and like critiquing my work and like just being a really good human being to me. Like, it was just unnecessary because he didn't even know who I was. We just met at some point, and he just like kept in touch with me. Same with Roddy Piper. Like, Roddy Piper did not have to engage with me whatsoever, but like we did an interview. I remember, I think it was like 2010 or 2011 at the Score, and we just kept in touch. And he was just like, you know what, this was a lot of fun. You really like this stuff. And like, he would just send tweets every 4 or 5 months. He'd be like, you deserve a job at WWE. Like, he would just like put things in the universe for me, like The Secret, like put things in the universe, it'll conspire in your favor. It was almost like he was doing that
on my book stuff, by the way, The Secret.
You do, yeah. So like, you get it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I believe in that 100%. Like, I love that kind of stuff. It's so powerful, like The Alchemist, The Secret, that kind of stuff. So like,
Yeah.
it was almost as if like Piper was doing that for me, but like, you didn't have to do that at all. Like, who am I to him? You know, it was just like such an act of kindness, really, like to care about my career and where I'm going. Like, man, I'll never forget that, ever. We'll never forget that. Speaking of commentators, I'm actually wearing, this is like the first wrestling shirt that I've bought in like, let me just stand so people can see because it's awesome. It's like NBA Jam inspired with Heenan and Brain. Like, this is the first wrestling shirt that I've bought in years and years and years. I don't buy wrestling shirts anymore. So like, but I had to buy this one because I wanted to commemorate, you know, people that I loved growing up, especially Gorilla. That was the one cool thing about WWE was my boss in the international department, a guy by the name of Tom Carlucci. He was there for like, I don't know, 21, 22 years. His whole family worked there. His son worked there. His wife worked there. His daughter worked there. Like, great family. He had so many Gorilla stories. And I think Gorilla had these license plates that said kayfabe on them, like K-Fabe. And I want to say that Tommy either has it or had it at some point. Like, it was like passed on to him as almost like an heirloom. I don't know if it's even legal. I don't know. But like, whatever. He had them at some point, and I don't know what he's done with them, but I thought that was cool to hear.
They named Gorilla position after Gorilla Monsoon.
Yes, that's right. That's correct. That's correct.
Much like Adnan, you also were working in weather. I don't know if he ever told you this, but he was once a weatherman as well.
Oh, I know. We would laugh about those Ottawa winters. He would make fun of me because I lasted 3 months in Ottawa. That's it. All I could take. I love the city, but like, as a weather reporter, forced to be outside. And actually, that's where I grew an appreciation for Canada Goose. And I'm not sponsored by them. I promise I'm not. But like, I would wear the Canada Goose jacket, and like from neck to waist, I would be perfectly fine. Thoroughly impressed. -40 weather, wind chill. It was awful. Face would be like frozen, like icicles coming out of the nose, you know, like spit freezes before you hit the ground kind of cold. But like, this would be perfectly fine. And I'm like, man, these Canada Goose jackets are impressive.
Yeah, so you're out there in the snowstorms, which is probably like a daily occurrence during your time during the winter. You ever break out the ruler, the measuring stick? All right, right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They wanted the gimmicks, man. We like, the thing with the weather is the secret that is like a poorly kept secret. And I'm sure both of you know this already. If it looks, the worse it looks, the better it is. So like, I would have to go, the conversation. So I'm not a meteorologist. I want to make that very clear. In Canada, you can be a weather reporter in the field without a meteorology degree. And I did not have a meteorology degree. I was simply reporting the weather in the field. I was not looking at graphs or anything. I was just telling you how the weather feels. So my job would be, I go into the studio, they would tell me where to go. They would be like, it's going to be particularly bad an hour north of here at this location, drive there. And that's what they want. They want it to look bad. So I'd often be at bodies of water because the wind would pick up, or it'd be cold, or you see like whatever. If there was some damage, if there was damage to a bridge or a tree fell or something to that effect, I would be there. It's funny, like, I worked for WWE, I worked for ESPN, I've done NHL game broadcasts, but the most my phone ever blew up for a single night of work was when I covered this massive blizzard in Ottawa, and it aired all across the country. And I got like hundreds and hundreds of messages of people. It was as if like everyone in my life was watching the storm coverage, and I was the guy at the worst spot every 10 minutes telling you how awful it was. And it was like, wow, like, of all things to have done in your career, it leads to freezing your ass off in the Ottawa cold, and that's what gets you the most recognition. It just makes me laugh.
Listen, Arda, you are weather entertainment here. That's what you are.
He's a sports entertainer, and he's a weather entertainer.
So tell us about how you incorporated interviews with celebrities and athletes into your weather reports.
So that started in Vancouver. In Ottawa it did, but like Ottawa, there was a lot more weather events to cover. And after 3 months, the real reason I moved, it wasn't because I didn't like the city. It was because Ottawa was a temporary job. So once the 3 months was over, there was a full-time job available in Vancouver. And they said, would you like to take it? And I said, absolutely. Like, why not? Right? Like, having a full-time job in this kind of business is difficult enough to get. And I thought, you know what? This is a good opportunity. I don't have any ties other than my parents in Ontario. So why not take a risk? So I went, and it was great. At that time, I was still sort of chasing the WWE dream, and I was like, I'm going to give it one last try. So they flew me in for an audition about 6 months in, and I was like, this is my last time. This Weather Network job is really good. I could be in this job for the rest of my career, really, if all goes well. And I'd be happy because it's a fun job and it's a morning show, so it's viewed across the country. So I was happy. It was a very good job. So I wanted to give it one more go and just say, I'm going to put it to bed. I'm going to feel comfortable. I can look at myself in the mirror and say, I tried, I'm good, cool. And then put wrestling behind me. So I did the audition, and then lo and behold, I end up getting the job. But while I was in Vancouver, I was there for a year. There isn't much weather happening in Vancouver, right? Like, basically the things that they wanted the most, weather events happen so few and far between. It's always going to be 10 degrees Celsius. It's always going to rain. Like, that's about it. So they wanted a lot of reports from Whistler because they wanted like the scenic shots of the mountains and people skiing and things like that. And I'm like, oh no, darn, I got to go to Whistler. Man, that stinks. Like, what a terrible life that is. And then they also wanted a lot of earthquake coverage. And I don't mean John Tenta. I mean like actual earthquakes. Like, British Columbia is way overdue for an earthquake, people. 250 years. The big one is coming. How do you prepare? What do you need in your bunker? Go to the seismologists at UBC, University of British Columbia, and tell them to tell you exactly why we're overdue and what the tectonic plates are looking like. And we got to make it severe, okay? We got to sound the alarm. This earthquake is coming. So like, that was like, the once a month I had to do an earthquake piece.
That's crazy.
That's
what I had to do.
Yeah,
that's what they wanted. Great. I'm like, okay, all right, earthquake piece.
Hey, listen, we have our own version of that. It's California, for 100 years now, waiting on the big one.
San Andreas came. That's The Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
That's right. Where are you guys based? Where do you guys live?
We are in New York.
You're in New York, okay.
Staten Island.
Staten Island, let's go. I still have yet to cruise around Staten Island.
Well, you missed
I'm
out
a Westchester guy.
You missed out on some great food.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to do that after the pandemic. I'm a Westchester guy. I miss New York, man. Like, I miss just like going around Manhattan and just being in the city,
Yeah, exploring stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah,
definitely.
A lot of stuff to explore.
As a native New Yorker, I cannot stand going to Manhattan.
I guess so. Can I tell you a funny story, actually, so you'll relate to this? So one of the things that people kept telling me when I moved to Stamford for WWE was like, I want to go explore, and like, I'd go like, all the touristy places, the central parks and whatever, experience it for the first time and whatever. Everyone was like, man, that means you're going to be in New York. That means you get to go to Times Square during New Year's Eve.
No.
Yeah. See, Joe.
And I know exactly where you were going with that.
Can I flex one time? Do you mind if I flex just for a second? Just one time, okay?
So
2018, Ninja, the gamer, right, famous guy, decides he wants to do a party at Times Square, all night party. Most people remember him trying to floss. Nobody's flossing with him. That's what most people remember from that night on ABC, right? The whole party, and he's like trying to floss, and everyone in the crowd is like, I'm not having this. We've been here for 16 hours. Like, who the hell are you, right? He jokes about it now. But the party itself was one of the, I was lucky enough to host that gig. So I somehow got that gig through Red Bull. They hired me to be the MC for that gig. And that was awesome because I got to sneak through all the crowd, and I got to bring my wife, Jen, with me to go to this party that was like catered and everything, but we're indoors in Times Square. I shot the ball.
Amazing.
So I'm like, okay, this is the only way that you can get me to Times Square on New Year's Eve is this experience right here. And I will never do it again, except for an experience like this. So that was like my one flex where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm being paid to MC this event in Times Square, experience this. I don't have to wear an adult diaper and stand outside for 25 hours. Perfect.
Yeah, there's two ways to know you're a real New Yorker. You never went to see the ball drop in Times Square, and you never got a double-decker bus tour.
Yes.
They always attack you. You want to go on tour? No, I don't want to go. But I mean, if the way you got it, the VIP experience with the catered food, and you're getting paid to be there, doesn't get much better than that.
That'll be my one flex. Okay, that'll be my one flex.
So
that's a perfectly acceptable reason to be in Times Square on New Year's. That's perfectly fine.
So you mentioned your last audition with WWE. Just to get to the audition, were you like constantly sending tapes or your reel to Michael Cole? What was that process like just to get the auditions?
It was even before Michael Cole. Like Michael Cole, I think he grew into that position later. Like my first audition was 2009. I had 4 auditions there. The 2009 one was awful. I just wasn't ready. I didn't have enough reps. It was very bad. And it took me 4 years to get another audition, honestly. No, 3 years to get another audition, somewhere in there. And I did really good on that one. I just didn't get the job. Then I got called in back to back. I actually got called in twice when I was in Vancouver. Once to do announcing for NXT. They were looking for NXT talent. And then again for the international job. And that's when I finally got the job. And so that 3-year span, I just didn't know. They kept me in the dark as to what happened. They told me after the fact. My boss told me when I finally got hired. I pressed them on it. I was like, so why did it take me so long? He's like, you weren't ready. Like, oh man, okay. But it was good for me because it motivated me harder. So it actually, in a way, it was a blessing in disguise. And so I would send my tape once every couple months. I didn't want to be, I wanted to be pleasantly persistent, but I didn't want to be a pest or a nuisance. And I kind of had to toe that line, right? Because you don't want to upset somebody, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're at the forefront if an opportunity does present itself, right? And you just don't know. Like there's no listing that says, well, at least back then there weren't any listings that said, hey, WWE's looking for on-air people, right? So one of the things I did actually, speaking of Tony Luffman, I saw on his Twitter account at that time that he had an agent, like he was interacting with his agent on Twitter. And I thought, oh, maybe signing with this agent would be a good idea. So I started to send my stuff to Tony's agent at the time, lovely lady. So I actually drove, she had an office in White Plains at the time. And I actually drove from Toronto to White Plains, which is like, what, a 9-hour drive. And I sat in her office. I let her, like, I didn't hear back from the email saying, hey, I'm going to be in the area on this day. You know, technically I was in the area, but I drove 9 hours to be in the area. So I sat in her office, in her lobby. And I just told the secretary or the receptionist, I'm just going to wait here until she's available. And the receptionist was like, might be a few hours. And I'm like, that's okay. I'm fine. So I just sat there. And then finally, near the end of the day, she brought me to the office and she's like, okay, I'm impressed. I'll give you an honest chance. And we looked at my reel and she's like, okay, I think that there's something here. And she asked me, like, why me? And I said, I saw you interacting with Tony. This is one of my dreams. I know that you have connections there. I think that we could make it work. And she said, okay, I agree. And then eventually I became one of her clients. So it was one of those like shot in the dark kind of things. Cause like, you know, having to drive 18 hours for a maybe is not exactly the easiest thing to do, but hey, sometimes it pays off.
You took a leap of faith, you networked. That's just the name of the game. You put yourself out there and it worked out for you. And that's really ultimately what it comes down to, right? Putting yourself out there, not being afraid to fail.
That's right.
Yeah. It worked out and no looking back for you. You get in WWE, you get the call, you get the job. I want to know, what was the process like to come up with your name? Did they give you the name? Did they give you some options, or was it a collaborative effort?
It's so funny to think about this story now. It's such a crazy story, but like that's the way it was back then. And I'm not, first of all, a lot of people ask me, were you annoyed? No, I wasn't annoyed at all. I knew that was going to be the case because most announcers especially didn't keep their names. And not only that, but I had a feeling and I knew that both of my names would probably be changed because I didn't have a popular name in America, right? So like I wasn't offended by that at all, because I knew that that was going to be, I already had made the decision in my head that like, it's not worth fighting for. They're going to change your name to something anyway, so it doesn't matter. So what happened is I got to the international department, and first week they said, we're going to start brainstorming your name. So think of a list, like put something together is what they said. And they did that for the entire department too. They said, you know, let's think of some names for him. So I put some names down. What I realized was, in researching, WWE had a history of a lot of on-air talent with two first names, like Josh Matthews and Justin Roberts and Tom Phillips and Jim Ross and Michael Cole. Like some of them were their real names, but there was a pattern, right? So I figured maybe I'll throw some names like that in there. Maybe those will stick, at least if I like them. And they also like alliteration. So I put a lot of like, you know, Ryan Randall or something like that, like just thinking of names like that that I would be comfortable with. I did try to fight for the last name Turk. I thought that that would be kind of cool, a little nod to the heritage kind of thing, and might be like suitable to me. I don't know how far that went, but I will say that once we got all the lists together, I heard this from 3 different people. I didn't hear this from obviously the source, but apparently it went all the way to Vince McMahon, who has his, like, this is just an example of how micro he gets in his company, because like, who cares to him, the owner of this massive billion-dollar company, what a lowly international announcer's name is, right? But like, it came up during a creative meeting and he took, I don't know, 30 seconds to look at the list, as I've been told. And he looks at it and he's like, I don't like any of these names. And the famous line that I heard was, he looks at it after he says that he doesn't like any of these names. He goes, you know, we don't have any Kyles in this company. And so Kyle was like, now that as soon as that happens, Kyle is the name. There was no debate. There was no wiggle room. My name is Kyle. That's it. So then they started thinking up last names. And the first one they thought it was Kyle Richards. I got a call from my boss and he's like, your name is Kyle Richards. Congratulations. Don't change your Twitter yet, but go tell your friends and family. Okay, great. So I do that. 5 minutes later, I get a call from my boss again. And he's like, you're not Kyle Richards anymore. And I'm like, oh, well, that was fast.
Housewife.
Yeah, exactly. Kyle Richards is a housewife on television. And I'm like, you didn't Google that first? Like, isn't that the first thing you do to see if it's someone on TV or something? So that's how I became Kyle Edwards, the NASCAR driver extraordinaire.
That's right. I love the everybody does the
oh yeah, no, that's a Vinceism for sure. God damn it, we need more Kyles. God damn it, we need more Kyles.
It's hilarious because, you know, I remember they briefly had all the on-air stuff with Edwards, and I remember Cena was big on that way back when, and it's just you instantaneously, if you're a sports fan, you make the connection. Obviously, it's just one of those things that pops into your head as soon as you hear it. But what I wanted to ask you is, so now we're going to get to the audition process, and I want to include all of your other stays, because you've worked for a lot of different networks in a lot of different capacity, doing a lot of different things. So how does the audition process differ, or how did it differ from, you know, network to network, company to company? And when you were doing your auditions for WWE, who were the most notable people who could not in the company now? Obviously, Nick mentioned Renee Young at the top of the podcast, but who were some of the other names that you were in the audition process competing against, and who were people who are still there at the company today, and who are people who you still maintain relationships, who you had the opportunity to audition with through the years?
Yeah, if not for Renee, Renee is excellent. She's probably one of the best on-air talents I've ever worked with. If not for her, actually, she put in a good word for me to get back onto the audition train. So I really credit her a lot for me being able to get another look, especially the last 2 auditions. By then she was at WWE, and she was very well loved. And she actually talked to Hunter on my behalf. I remember I went to the opening of the Performance Center as a member of the media, and Hunter, I introduced myself to Hunter before doing our interview, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I know you. Renee talks a lot of shit about you." And I just started laughing. I was like, "Oh no!" like a nervous laugh. And he's like, "I'm kidding," and he just like hits me on the back, and we do this interview. But yeah, no, she was like, if not for her, I think that my journey would have been a lot longer, if nothing at all. So yeah, she's awesome. And so, okay, the differences between the auditions. So WWE is actually a pretty thorough audition in the sense that like you go through announcing matches and doing a bunch of the different roles. And one thing they try to trip you up on, and it did trip me up in 2009, but I was ready for it in 2013 because they did the same trick, is they'll just hand you an object to try and sell you on it. So like in 2009, they gave me a makeup applicator and I didn't know what it was, and I tripped up on it. In 2013, they gave me the same makeup applicator and I just invented something, and they were like, "Good job on that." Like I was ready for that. So they try to do something to
Wall Street.
Yeah, it's like Wolf of Wall Street. Sell me this pen.
Sell me this
Yeah,
pen.
exactly. I never understood that scene, by the way. Can you explain that to me? Like when he actually gets it right? So like
Right.
the whole premise is, I need you to sign this. What is it? This check or something?
Yes.
But like, so okay, I need you to sign this check. I don't have a pen. Here, buy mine. But like, that logic to me doesn't compute. Can you explain that? Like, why if I'm in need of the pen, why am I buying that pen if I want to sign this check? What do I need to sign it for?
Well, the objective is you're not only selling the pen itself, but you're also selling yourself, and you're selling the company, and you're selling everything that comes with it.
Okay,
So,
I see.
yeah, so it's, you think more macro scale as opposed to.
I was too narrow in my thought here. All right, Joe, I'll buy that, Joe. I'll buy your pen. I'll buy your pen.
Yeah, but we can always ask Adnan Verk on the Cinephile pod. I'm sure he has the.
Actually, that's actually the right thing to do. We should actually hear his thoughts on that and see what he thinks about that scene, because I'm very curious. It's always been in my head. So that's actually a good call. Very good call. So that was the audition process for WWE. Honestly, for MSG and ESPN, I gave them so much material that they didn't really give me screen tests, in all honesty. I did a lot of like different interviews talking with people. I think that they were convinced that I could do the job. I think it was just finding the role or the fit. MSG, to do the MSG hockey show, I did one interview in a conference room and they were like, "Yep, we've seen your stuff. We know that you're good." And I got hired, which was awesome. I love that show. That was amazing. We did 2 seasons of that. And then through that, that's where I got on to Devils and Rangers broadcast, which was the best. I loved that. And actually one of my biggest misses and like career, not even failures, but like just like one of the most sad times I've been in my career was I got really close to being the host of the Devils. Ooh. And that would have been like a career job. Like for any hockey broadcaster to be like the host of a broadcast or play-by-play announcer for a broadcast would be amazing. And by that time I was like really ingrained with the team. I was doing like a podcast with them. I was doing Devils games on TV, like doing like 10 or 15 games a year, like contributing different things and doing features and all this stuff. And the Devils hosting job became available. And basically I went through like 3 different rounds of auditions and I came in second. And it was like, oh man, this stinks. Like my heart sank. It was like, this is the job I really was like, this would be perfect, you know, in New York and an on-air gig and hockey. So I was very sad about that one for a while. But then ESPN came up, so luckily it wasn't sad for long. But basically those auditions, they were more interviews than anything, like just meeting with producers and impressing them, etc., because they'd already seen my stuff. But like WWE's was pretty thorough. It was more like a can you handle it kind of thing, like even throwing improv at you, so to speak. So like you guys doing improv classes would suit you very, very well in that situation, especially and I had not done Second City in 2009. So maybe if I had, I would have been more comfortable being like, I'll invent this thing, you know, as opposed to that's actually one of the reasons I started taking improv, was because I felt like it would make me more, nimble and on the off the cuff in interviews. Like when I'm interviewing people, I just like trust my gut, you know, because that's like the first thing they teach you in improv. Trust your gut, yes, and all that stuff. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Got to be able to adapt. I'm sure it's helped you doing, play-by-play with NHL 94 as well, just improvising and whatnot.
So much fun.
A few things here. You kind of walked us through the next few years, but with WWE, first, we of course got to ask you, did you meet Vince McMahon? What was it like? Were you intimidated? And obviously, you grew up a huge wrestling fan. So meeting some of your heroes for the first time, what was that like? Any nerves at all? And then moving on to MSG, everybody knows Stan Fischler. He's a bit of a legend. So what was it like meeting him for the first time? I know when I interned there, it was quite the interesting experience working.
You were one of his interns?
I was an MSG Network intern.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so I did a lot of Devils games with the crew there, Larry Gaines, Chuck, Roland, Mark Monk, my boss, worked with Bobby Mills.
You'll appreciate this. When I first met Roland, I thought he was a former Devils player.
You have to.
Because he's so giant. Yeah, he's like a giant human being. And I was like, you must have played for I actually Googled it. I was like, did he play for he probably played in the NHL or something. I was like, man, he's such a giant dude. Nicest guy though, right? Like just the nicest guy. Just like, man, he's so giant. Anyway, so going back to your question, so wait, can you repeat that? Sorry, I got sidetracked.
Man, did you meet?
Oh, Vince McMahon. So I met him twice. Yeah, I met Vince twice. One time was just like at a WrestleMania party for employees. He was there, just shook hands with people. Nothing serious. I never really worked with him. One time I was at a TV in Washington and I was like, by then, the thing is, by then I had met all of my quote unquote heroes, right? Like I'd interviewed them all. So I interviewed Bret Hart, I interviewed Hulk Hogan, I interviewed Roddy Piper, Howard Finkel, Mean Gene. Like I'd met them all through like different events and whatever. So it was all like current WWE superstars that maybe I hadn't met by then. So Vince McMahon, so I was talking with R-Truth in a hallway, and R-Truth had like yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. No 24/7 championship. Otherwise I would have totally, that's one time I'm going to invite him to ESPN so I can win the 24/7 championship and just be like, finally Kyle Edwards is a former WWE champion. And that's how I'm going to say it too. Like, I'm not going to say which championship. I'm just going to say former WWE champion Kyle Edwards and future Hall of Famer. Like, let's also put that out there. Like, it's going to happen eventually, right? So anyway, I'm talking to R-Truth, and he has this like plate of beef ribs in his hand, like a bowl of beef ribs. And Vince McMahon walks by and he sees us talking and he sees the ribs and he looks at it and he goes, "Oh, why are you eating that filth?" And R-Truth looks at him, goes, "Boss, I'm strong because of this meat. Or I'm strong because of this." And then Vince McMahon looks at him and goes, "You're strong in spite of that," and walks away. And I look at Archer, and Archer looks at me, he's like, and he starts eating again. It's just so ridiculous, right? Like, you're strong in spite of that. So those are my interactions with Vince in person. I didn't get a chance to talk to him much beyond that. But yeah, no, it was a ride, man. I enjoyed WWE. It was fun. I'm glad it happened, but I'm glad that I've been able to have the career I've had after that, to be honest. And meeting the Maven is awesome. He is a encyclopedia of hockey knowledge. We got along great. He was a lot of fun to be around. He would tell you the same stories over and over and over again, as I'm sure you know, Nick. If you hang out around Maven enough, he has the same like 30 stories that he cycles through in his head. That is just like, because he's the Maven and he's like commanded so much respect in his career, you just laugh.
The Islanders even made one of their jerseys after him. They put his logo right there.
Exactly. So he was great to be around. All the MSG media members and hosts were excellent, and it was fun to be with them. I had a blast. at MSG. It was some of the best times of my career, honestly, like doing the 150s and segments on the Rangers broadcast, Knicks and
Still
whatever. It
Pino,
was awesome.
legend, making the 150.
Oh, Pito's the best, man. Like,
You had him
speaking
on.
of weather,
He was the
Pito's
last one we
awesome.
did before you.
Did you talk to him about the weather?
So like if it's icy, it's dicey.
Yeah. So the most Pito is the most concerned about the weather of any broadcaster I've ever met in my entire life. And he has a long commute too. Like he actually commutes from like northern Connecticut to get to New York, right? And like I swear to you, I'd come into MSG and it'd be like snowing outside, and like forget about hockey, forget about anything. You'd be like, hey, how was your commute? Is everything okay? Was the snow too much? like that's all he just care about the weather. He's like, how are you gonna get home? Is everything gonna be okay? You have to take a train. Like it would be like meticulous detail about the weather. Like the weather was the gravest concern to Bill Pito. It's like the best. I love that guy. I miss Bill. He's the best.
I love when Bill rolls up his sleeves for the MSG 150.
It makes it nice and relaxed. Exactly. That's right. That's it. It's a relaxed atmosphere.
So I want to group this next question together here. We got a lot of stuff to discuss still. So kind of for your purpose.
Yeah. No worries.
We got TRT World. You did those pretty cool internet type of clips, which I think a little bit ahead of its time in the sense of when you started there. You also, of course, did you did the broadcasting with the Devils and hockey, and then you've also then started and still have been doing the NHL World Gaming Championships. So just kind of tell us here, like, how did those opportunities come about for you, and what did you enjoy most about all those different projects?
So TRT World actually aired on TV in Turkey, oddly enough. Like they had an English, TRT is basically the ESPN of Turkey, and they had an English counterpart that we aired on. And so I was their North American sports analyst. I just reached out to them and said, hey, do you have anybody in North America that can do segments? They asked me if I could do segments from home and just report on American sports that happened in the past weekend. And I said, yeah, for sure. So I did that for 4 years. It was like a part-time thing I did once a week. And it was a lot of fun. It was very easy to do because I was doing it from home. And so I did a lot of NFL. I did a lot of baseball, maybe some Stanley Cup hockey, or maybe major fights, that kind of thing. I remember we did this makes me laugh thinking about it, because like Turkey is not a hockey country, obviously, but they do have a hockey team. But it's just really funny. So I put together a feature. I don't even know why they aired this. I was at the Devils draft party when they drafted Nico Hischier. And so I sold TRT on a feature about the NHL draft and the Devils drafting and who they would draft and all this stuff. It was like a 2-minute feature, and they aired it on Turkish sports television. Like, can you take a guess? Can you take a guess how many New Jersey Devils fans there are in the entirety of Turkey?
Probably zero.
It's so funny to me. I'm just like, Ray Shiro was the GM at the time. And I told him this. I was like, by the way, this got covered in Turkey. And he looked at me like with this strange look, like, how? So I told him the story. I was like, yeah, no, I did it. And he was like, why? It's like, because we can. I don't know. It just makes me laugh. It's funny. And I don't know. It's just the fact that we got it done. It's like one of those like things you talk about, and it's like, this is gonna be a story that I tell for years. It's just so funny. So that was TRT World. And then the NHL Gaming World Championship is probably my favorite gig, among my favorite gigs that I do, but definitely I've been doing it for this will be the 4th season now. And how that happened, honestly, was I had a lot of hockey. I love video games. So when I heard that this was happening, I was like, I need to reach out to someone in the NHL to know that I exist, because I want this job. Like, this is something I can do. And I had the NHL commentary. I was a lifelong gamer. And so I was like, I found the right person, and I just talked their ear off and sold them on me. And that's honestly how it happened. I just found right place, right time, found the right person, told them exactly who I was, why I had all this experience, why I should be the person to do this. And they were sold. And so we did it for the first 2 seasons. We did Sweden, Stamford, Toronto, and then finals in Vegas. And then the third season we did it remote, and all of them have been amazing. I love it. It's probably my favorite gig. It's just like, it's so much fun. Like, it's hockey and video games is like my perfect intersection, you know?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that I've gotten to do some Gaming World Championship clips for NHL.com.
Yeah, let's go.
There. Nick's worked in a couple of different places, but I wanted to bring this up because I went to Marist.
Okay.
You, professor at Iona.
Yes.
Technically, we're rivals.
Do we have to fight now?
I mean, they could put us on the Royal Rumble pre-show. I think that's a great idea. But
great idea. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you how that opportunity came about, because it's interesting with your academic background. Did they reach out to you to go back and do a teaching class? Was teaching or giving back in a way something that you had always thought of in the back of your mind that could be a possibility once you really got your career stabilized?
Yeah, 100%. I love teaching. I love mentoring. I have, like, I don't know, 10 or 12 people in the industry that I talk to regularly and just give them tips, or like more just like, hey, tell me what's on your mind, vent to me if you need it. Do you have any questions about, you know, any decisions you have coming up? Like, I just do that because I find I live vicariously through their successes, because I've had a fun career, and I can, it's all about passing it on. Like, otherwise you're going to die with it. Like, what benefit is that? Right. So Iona's been great. I've been there for 3 years. I also do a lot of esports guest lecturing at Syracuse as well. So that it just keeps me busy. I love it. I absolutely, like, that's going to be something I do. I don't know if I get to be a full-blown professor, because I don't think that I would have the patience to write a paper or anything like that. But I think teaching part of it, I would keep up probably for the rest of my life, because it's among the most gratifying when you see people that you've taught get jobs, or you help them out along the way. Like, a part of it is also, like, I had a bumpy road, right? Like, I didn't have much help coming up. I did have some people, like you said, like Adnan, who have been there for me, but like, it was few and far between, because it's a very competitive industry. So I wanted to make sure that I was the opposite of that I would try and help as many as I can, because at the end of the day, like, you can only go as far as who you know, right? Like, your circle of people that you know that are going to get help open doors for you. But I also take comfort in the fact that it's not just me. Like, they have to impress once they get there. So it's like, I love the idea of, okay, well, you know, we can take you to a certain point, but then you got to kick the door open. You got to leave your impression. You got to make it on your own, right? And so, like, there's still that element of, you made it on your own. I was just there as support, you know, like at a minimal amount. So yeah, I absolutely love it. Teaching's the best. And Iona will always be number 16 going into March Madness, and always fizzle out in the first round.
Yeah.
And but I'll be there
now,
trolling on Twitter.
Rick Pitino might be able to get you guys to a high.
Yeah, here's hoping.
I've released through the tournament. I'm a St. John's grad, and we gotta wait every 7 years we get in the tournament. It's a disaster. Now,
I love it.
While you're at MSJ, you're doing the freelancing work with ESPN, and then in 2019, you get the opportunity there to go full time. Was it a hard decision? And ultimately, how did the full-time opportunity present itself and come up? And I guess initially, how did you first start doing the freelance work as well?
So freelance was actually through esports. The first time they went to MSG for League of Legends, ESPN sent the table and I hosted it. I reached out after I left WWE because I saw they were launching a WWE vertical, and I said, can I contribute to this? And they said, sure, but actually we need some support on the esports side. Would you be willing to consider that as well? And I said, yeah, sure. You know, say yes to everything. I had a month to learn League of Legends, which you cannot learn in a month. It's a very, very difficult game to learn, but also scene to learn. I had not played League of Legends up until that point, but I was confident in the hosting part of it. I just need to learn the knowledge. So I spent a month treating it like a full-time job, like 8 hours, 10 hours, just learning League of Legends and just learning the game, learning the particulars, learning the people, learning the esport, learning the history, everything. So by the time I got there, I felt pretty prepared to talk about the tournament that was happening. So after that, I did odd gigs, went to BlizzCon, did a couple of coverage here and there, got into MMA. So we did a MMA podcast called 5 Rounds for a year. And that was just like, you know, part-time supplement what else I was doing. And then finally, I'd gone to Bristol here and there, maybe 3 or 4 times, just talking with different people to see if opportunities became available. And it's a big company, so of course things are going to move slower than many people might want or whatever. I mean, that's just the way that it is. So finally, in July-ish of 2019, or maybe it was May or June, like obviously like getting the ball rolling, papers and things like that. They said, okay, I think we have a scenario where we can put many things on your plate and you can come work here. So I've been very blessed. I've done a lot of different things, including now where I am basically a hired gun, where I just hosted my first, I'm going to be contributing to SportsCenter in different ways on different platforms. And I just hosted my first radio edition on Friday. And so I was just solo by myself hosting SportsCenter for an hour, which was awesome. That was a lot of fun. And so, you'll see me on Snapchat every now and then. You'll see me on different things and ESPN Plus and things like that. And I'm super pumped about it. Like I'm very excited. I'm optimistic about what's to come.
Absolutely. We're very optimistic. We're definitely going to continue to watch you and follow up, and hopefully when you find some time, we will have you on again, because this was.
Oh yeah, please. Just make sure that it's not after Scott Stanford. Like if you can give Scott Stanford like maybe a year hiatus, and then I'll come on.
How about
fine.
Tony Luff?
Like Tony and Scott and Tom Phillips. Those 3 names.
Okay.
If you can avoid them at all costs.
Okay.
And
well,
and actually Corey Graves too. Let's throw Corey in there too.
David Otunga.
The 4 of them. Yeah. Like if they have 2 first names, let's leave them out completely.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? We'll make sure that we don't have Renee on until we have you on again.
Renee's the best, actually. You should have her on. She's awesome.
Okay. So we're a yes to Renee, and we're a no to Tom Phillips.
Corey to everyone else.
Especially
Scott Stanford. Oh, man. Scott's the best.
What's funny is that when we had Scott on, and this is straight from him, not Nick and I, Scott was basically saying to us that the reason why he limits or does not appear on other extra WWE programming, such as the Bump and et cetera, is he said, I'm paraphrasing, if he went on, he would basically take everybody's jobs. So, I mean,
of course, sure, yeah. I mean, it's that picks, 17 Emmys pedigree from Scott Stanford. Like when you have been at WWE for 48 years. You learn a thing or two, it's just the way that it is.
48.
They won't let him on the bump because they're afraid that he's gonna steal their job. That's what he said.
He's gonna bump them out of their jobs.
Exactly.
Great pun. Great wrestling pun.
Wow.
This was a lot of fun. I think it was a lot of great information. I think the stuff that you share with us about taking improv classes and doing that, I think is extremely valuable. Stuff that obviously people would not necessarily have at the top of their minds, or priority rather. Say yes to everything. I think you do an excellent job of also giving back, not only professionally but academically as well. I think a lot of people always say, what is the meaning of life? I think the meaning of life is to become the absolute best version of yourself, and then figure out a way to use that knowledge and that experience to give back to other people, so that can empower them to be the best versions of themselves. I think you epitomize that incredibly well, and we really, really enjoyed having you on. We're definitely going to have you on again. Yes, we're going to have you on before everybody else. Make a note of that. You get priority. But what we do here is we always give our guests.
I appreciate it.
So if there's anything else you would like to share, promote, go right ahead. We hope you stay well with everything going on in the world. Stay safe, you and your family. I don't know if you have family who lives back in Turkey or back in Canada, but we hope and wish the best for them as well. So go ahead. The floor is all.
Yeah, no, same. Honestly, thanks for having me. This was very insightful and a lot of fun. You guys put a lot of research into this. Really appreciate it. One of my more fun interviews that I've done in a long time. So it's a good testament to you guys and the preparation you've done. And this was fun. So yeah, please have me on again. And honestly, just good vibes and acts of kindness, man. That's what it's all about. Just be kind to each other, especially throughout a pandemic. This is like, it's crazy. I was thinking about, like, maybe we can end on this, but like 2020 is probably the year that like is going to be the most written about in our lifetimes. Do you know what I mean? Like everything that happened in that year, like everything, pandemic, etc. Like probably going to be the most documented and written about year. Like we went through that, you know. It's crazy to think about that in like the lens of like world history. Like this is a year that people will still know about in 100 years when we're all dead, you know. It's crazy.
Wild times. That's
Yeah.
gonna do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. First,
Ended on a light note, right? Like I thought that, you know, pandemic talk ended on a positive note, uplifting. That's the way to do it.
you know what?
I really pulled a Scott Stanford there. I can't believe it.
All right, why don't you end it with take it back to the beginning here. Why don't you give us a nice "yeah, buddy" like DJ Paulie did?
Yeah, buddy.
There you go. There you go. So that's going to do it here for our special guest, Arda, and for my co-host, Joe. I am Nick, and this has been You Know I'm Right.